You ever actually stopped to think about how you, yes you, went from being a single tiny microscopic cell to the fully grown, incredibly complex adult you are today? I mean, it doesn't just happen by magic, right? Today, we're going to make this super intuitive and fun as we look at how a very specific, highly coordinated crew of hormones acts as your personal biological construction team, building you up over a lifetime.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll figure out what growth actually means. Then we'll meet the hormone construction crew. After that, we'll look at our project managers, GH and IGF-1, see what happens when growth goes totally rogue, check out the stress and brain factors, and finally, wrap it up with puberty, the final spurt. Let's get going.
Section 1. What exactly is growth? Honestly, to start off, we kind of need to redefine a word we literally use every single day. So, what does it actually mean to grow? Well, if you think growing is just, getting taller or having to buy bigger shoes, you're actually missing out on some incredible biochemical magic happening right beneath the surface. Growth isn't just getting taller, it's an incredibly complex, lifelong process.
Think about it. It all starts way before you're even born. Inside the womb, during intrauterine growth, it is a frantic race. Your cells are just rapidly multiplying, and this is driven largely by what your mom supplies, plus insulin and a very specific hormone called IGF-2. But the second you're born, the whole strategy flips. Postnatal growth suddenly hits the brakes on all that crazy multiplication and shifts into a much more deliberate phase of cell enlargement. And for that, a completely different set of hormones takes over the job, mainly growth hormone and IGF-1. And this brilliantly illustrates our whole construction metaphor. You see, growth really requires two fundamental physical changes. First up is hyperplasia. That basically means adding more structural bricks to your building, literally increasing the actual number of cells you have. The second is hypertrophy, which means taking the bricks you already have and bulking them up, increasing cell size. Throw in some extracellular matrix to act as the mortar between all these bricks, and boom, you've got a growing human. Now, as we move through the different stages of life, from being a tiny infant all the way into our senior years, the hormone foremen running our construction site are constantly shifting their strategies. I mean, the rapid growth spurts of a toddler are obviously very different from the slow, steady maturation of an older kid, right? Section 2. Meet the hormone construction crew. So, who exactly is putting on a hard hat for this biological building project? Let's meet the team. To grow normally, you absolutely need the perfect coordination of a massive crew. We're talking growth hormone, IGF-1, thyroid hormones, glucocorticoids, sex steroids, insulin, and calcitriol. Think of it exactly like a union job on a construction site. If even one of these crew members decides to go on strike, the entire project gets delayed. No one builds the building alone. Moving on to Section 3, the project managers, GH and IGF-1. Let's meet the absolute VIPs of the site. Okay, pay attention to the chain of command here because it's fascinating. Your brain, specifically the hypothalamus, acts like the CEO. It sends a direct signal to the pituitary gland to release growth hormone, or GH. Now, GH acts directly on your metabolism. It frees up fatty acids for energy and acts as an insulin antagonist. But indirectly, it actually tells your liver to step up and produce IGF-1. And IGF-1 is the actual signal that drives your bones to grow longer. And here is something super cool you can take away right now. You are quite literally growing in your sleep. Seriously, GH isn't just released as some steady, boring drip. It's highly pulsatile. It happens in these massive bursts, particularly when you're doing strenuous exercise, and crucially, during deep sleep. So while you're resting, GH is working the night shift, mobilizing energy and repairing your tissues. If we look at your body's lifetime budget for growth hormone, you can see it actually starts off pretty low at birth. Then it slowly ramps up through childhood, and then boom, you get this explosive peak right during puberty. After that wild ride, production dramatically scales back down into a nice, steady, lower plateau for our adult lives, before eventually dropping off significantly as we enter our senior years. So while growth hormone is the project manager, IGF-1 is really the master contractor doing the actual heavy lifting. It impacts everything. We're talking neural development, cardiovascular health, immune cell function. It works right there at the local tissue level. It is deeply embedded in pretty much every single system you have. Section 4, when growth goes rogue. But what happens when the project manager completely loses the blueprints? Well, if you have a massive overproduction of growth hormone, which is usually caused by a pituitary tumor, and this happens before your epiphyseal plates or growth plates have fused,
It leads to a condition called gigantism. This is characterized by extreme but mostly proportional height. A great example is the legendary Minneapolis giant John Asson, who reached an absolutely incredible 2.5 meters tall. However, what if this exact same overproduction happens in adulthood after your growth plates have permanently closed? Well, then it results in a condition called acromegaly. Because your bones literally cannot get any longer, they have to go somewhere, so they get thicker instead. This leads to things like enlarged hands and feet, soft tissue overgrowth, an enlarged tongue, and honestly, some pretty serious cardiovascular risks. And here's a wild twist for you. Your dentist might actually be the very first medical professional to spot this kind of brain tumor. No, really, because acromegaly causes the jawbone to slowly overgrow. That's a condition called prognathism. It creates these new, unusual gaps between the teeth. So dentists are actually perfectly positioned to notice these super slow progressing changes way before anyone else even realizes something's up. On the flip side of having too much, what if the construction site just completely runs out of growth hormone? Well, for kids, they'll experience severe growth failure and just totally miss their height milestones. For adults, a lack of GH means reduced muscle mass, more body fat, chronic low energy, and really poor bone density. In these cases, getting timely recombinant growth hormone therapy is absolutely life-changing. It restores vitality and gets your body composition back on track. Section 5. The stress and brain factors. Let's step away from GH for just a second and look at two incredibly specialized contractors on our site: glucocorticoids and thyroid hormones. First up, glucocorticoids, like cortisol. These are your body's stress hormones. Think of them as the ruthless site auditors. If a child is chronically stressed out, those elevated cortisol levels literally halt the construction project. It actively stops the bone-building osteoblast cells, breaks down proteins, drops IGF-1 production, and can literally stunt physical growth and delay puberty. Chronic stress is no joke for a growing body. Meanwhile, thyroid hormones are absolutely vital, especially for your brain. They increase growth hormone receptors and stimulate bone maturation. But more importantly, they are completely essential for central nervous system development. Without early neonatal screening, congenital hyperthyroidism can lead to a condition known as cretinism, which causes severe mental and physical delays. So catching that early is absolutely crucial. Section 6. Puberty, the final spurt. Which brings us right to the grand finale of our physical construction project. Sex steroids, so estrogen and testosterone, are this absolutely fascinating double-edged sword. On one hand, they act as the spark. They ignite that explosive, accelerated growth spurt of your teenage years. But on the other hand, high levels of estrogen ultimately serve as the brakes. They command the epiphyseal growth plates in your bones to permanently fuse, effectively closing down the longitudinal construction site forever. The building's capped. Which leaves us with a truly mind-bending thought to wrap up today's explainer. Medical science actually shows us that if a person has a single genetic defect in their estrogen receptors, their growth plates never receive the signal to fuse, meaning their bones could keep growing indefinitely. It really leaves you wondering, if one tiny receptor dictates exactly when we stop growing, how much of our physical destiny is truly locked in, and what other crazy biological limits might we unlock in the future? Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining me today.